So we just showed you the IRCC, the Immigration Services in Canada, the Border Protection Agency in Canada. All these different government agencies just don't have control whatsoever on the immigration crisis that's affecting this entire nation. They have no idea who they're allowing in. They just announced that there's 47,000, possibly up to 79,000 international students that either violate their visas or just here illegally, whatever the circumstances are, that by law should be deported, and nothing's being done about it. They can't even do anything about it because they don't know where they are. They have no control. They have no acknowledgement of any existence of these people, and they're just trying to pass the blame on to someone else because they don't want to be caught red-handed in orchestrating this whole catastrophe. And we talked about the initiative behind this, like who's really involved in this, because obviously this is not just a simple case of, just circumstances that they can't control, like, oh, it's just incompetence that they can't calculate the numbers. Obviously someone did this intentionally. So we showed you Viktor Orban, for example, the Prime Minister of Hungary, reading a statement from George Soros back in 2015, 10 years ago, discussing how we need to, open the floodgates for more migration. So obviously the billionaire class is attracted to this. We know that corporations, we discussed Tim Hortons, for example, using the temporary foreign worker program to scam out Canadians, flush them out of the workplace so they can use cheap foreign labor, so they don't have to pay them real wages or unionize them or breaks or whatsoever. So they're also affected by this. And there's also the Century Initiative. And I just want to highlight this point that Maxime Bernier reminds us. Red alert. Mark Carney has hired Mark Wiseman of the Century Initiative, an organization that wants Canada's population to reach 100 million by the end of the century. He says we should drop all immigration screening and just let everyone in. These people are nuts. So the Century Initiative is this giant NGO that people like Mark Wiseman, who was at BlackRock before joining this, so you know exactly the intent of why they have this NGO, and also Mark Carney was a part of this. Here he is at their last summit. There he is in the middle there. We're going to show you the video of him announcing how Canada needs to drop their checks and balances to allow for mass migration of people. And it's one of the many reasons why we're in this circumstance, why we're in this chaotic crisis that the IRCC and the CBSA and other agencies have no control over because they're being told by this NGO. So let's take a listen to this.
Part of the answer here is a private sector answer. Let the private sector move to bring people in and facilitate them being able to do that. And,
So he said that we should move this to a private sector position, meaning the private sector should decide who gets to be vetted in. The private sector, the ones that are abusing the open border policy to implement cheap foreign labor. Those guys. So that more Tim Hortons and other companies, other private equity corporations can scavenge for more cheap labor. That's great. Put it into the private position instead of actually having accountability. That's what the guy from BlackRock, who's now the chair of this ace organization, is stating. Well, let's hear that again.
Part of the answer here is a private sector answer. Let the private sector move to bring people in and facilitate them being able to do that. And, a lot of the screening and other stuff that we do, frankly, is just bureaucracy. It's a waste of time.
That's like saying, hey, drug dealers should deal with the healthcare crisis. All the ERs that are shutting down, all the people that can't afford their medication, yeah, just send them to the fentanyl camps. Because that works out. Move it to a private sector position. Instead of just actually having accountability, instead of actually having proper border security, which is what everybody wants. This guy, This schmuck is telling you that, no, we got to move it to a private position so that more corporations can exploit the government in bringing in more cheap labor and further abusing Canadian workers and putting them off to the streets. We have high unemployment right now because of this. And he's saying that's fine. It's the private position.
Fine. Let's let people in by and large, and if we have to do the screening ex post, that's fine. I can tell you, bad guys and bad women probably find their way into this country through means other than applying through permanent residency. Like, let's just face that, right? So
instead of saying, hey, we should track those people, crack down on them, and have proper vetting for immigration, he's going to just say, no, we shouldn't just have vetting whatsoever. Because, there's a few stragglers. There's a few individuals that will compromise that. So instead of having border security, we're just going to completely eliminate that. That's insane. That's insane. So because a few people get in here illegally, and instead of you saying we got to crack down on that person or crack down on that organization and still have proper border protection that facilitates everybody, no. We'll just get rid of all of it. Because one person is going to wreck it for everybody. So just eliminate that. This is a guy that could care less about your safety, couldn't care less about your school, couldn't care less about anything. This is a self-interested, ignorant schmuck he is. That's the head of this NGO that's working in partnership with the government of Canada to purposely undermine our ability to have proper borders. And again, everyone agrees with it. Bernie Sanders, the most, lefty Democrat, even said that open borders is a Koch brothers idea. And now they're being indoctrinated by people like Mark Wiseman, by BlackRock, by all these NGOs, by the WEF, to say that this is a good thing. Flood our communities with all these migrants. We have no idea where they came from, how to incorporate them, how to build up our services. Let's just make more people sleep on the streets. Let's make more damages to our society because of people like him.
So we just need to sort of take this on as a challenge and a problem, have KPIs, and then partner with the private sector. I mean, look at this anachronistic way of these labor market opinions, those who've tried to hire somebody from outside the country to do a job. I mean, it's crazy. Guess what? A Canadian firm wants to hire somebody from outside the country. They've identified them, they interviewed them, they want to pay them, and that individual is going to be taxes in Canada. Approved. What's that? What's that mortgage ad? Approved. Right? Like we should get those guys to be running our immigration system.
Yeah, we should just go outside the country, smuggle someone in to fill a position so we can abuse them for cheap labor. They're unskilled. They don't maybe not speak English, maybe not speak French, which are two very important, our official languages in this country. We can't identify them. We don't have acknowledgement, but we'll smuggle them in so that the Canadian worker or the possible Canadian within this country, or even the legal immigrant that went through this checkpoints to become a permanent resident, they can't get employment. Like, do you see how barbaric this is? Do you see how barbaric? Oh, yes. We need to partner with private corporations so that they have easier access to exploit the system so they can get workers outside the country. Because God forbid if we actually train our own people to fill positions within the workforce so that our unemployment wouldn't be so skyrocketed, so that people won't be living on the streets, so that homelessness doesn't come rampant. But this schmuck could not care less about it. Could not care less about it. And he couldn't care more about it because, hey, Carney just allowed him to be part of the government. So, for my politics, Carney adds Century Initiative co-founder to the Canada-US Council. So they allowed this guy from BlackRock, who runs this hideous NGO exploiting our migration crisis, to be part of the negotiations between Canada and the United States. How do you think that's going to go well? How do you think that's going to go well when Donald Trump is putting ICE agents out there to crack down on migrants? How do you think that's going to work, that you're adding someone that's in favor of more illegal migration? How do you think that's going to work in favor of having a proper negotiation that, you know, you now have United States can look at this and go, well, this is obviously a joke. They're not serious about their immigration, which, again, you can look at the United States. I've had conflictions about how they're dealing with their immigration and cracking down on workers. You know, there's a lot to be said about that, but at least they're doing something. I will have to say that at least they're doing something. It's horrible, it's horrific, but it's better than this. Better than having Mark Wiseman tell a room full of people, yeah, just send it to the private sector. Let them deal with it. And you crybabies out there, just shut up. Because we need more illegals to take over workplaces. And here's Mark Carney during a Council on Foreign Relations. This is in the UK, where it says, Carney says Canada will thrive in a new global system because government still has money to spend. Diversity is our strength, and we're committed to sustainability. Big government, mass immigration, and climate communism is what will make Canada thrive, according to Mark. So this is all part of the authoritarian agenda that we're going to bring in a bunch of illegals. We're going to crack down on people. We're going to make such a crisis out of this that people are going to be desperate to conform into a digital ID service, meaning that's going to encapsulate you, a law-abiding Canadian citizen. You didn't cross the border illegally. You're not connected to any NGO. So why are you being baited for this? Because they fearmonger you with mass migration. They flood these cities for chaos for this exact reason. And here's Mark Carney in Europe talking about this directly to Canadians.
Power like Canada can deal with the situation where the rules-based order is eroding, great power rivalries intensifying, and authoritarian models are hardening. All of this is reducing. I can't have to observe this doing UN week.
By the way, when he says rules-based order is eroding, does he mean that, hey, people are waking up to the realization that your New World Order didn't work out? You know, that commitment that George H.W. Bush said to the American population, that we have a New World Order, not the rule of law and not the rule of the jungle, but the rule of global elites, you know, possible pedophiles and fans of the playground. That didn't work out. That didn't pan out for people. You know, social media allowed for people to see and expose what's really happening in the world. Yeah, well, now he's saying that we need to crack down even further. We need to have another new world order.
Reducing the effectiveness of our multilateral institutions from the WTO to the UN, on which middle powers like Canada have greatly relied. So what do we do about it? And I'm going to give you a punchline, which is we think we can thrive, and I choose that word advisedly, thrive in this new non-system, or the system that's evolving, for three reasons. And the first is we have what the world wants. Take on the energy side, we are an energy superpower. That is going to become increasingly evident. And we have a government that still has fiscal capacity to act decisively at a moment when governments need to act decisively. Now, the second reason.
A government that has fiscal capacity. Again, this is the same government that just doesn't have any information about mass migration. Completely clueless about that. Completely incompetent. They don't have any awareness about the GDP. The economy's collapsing. They are spending money frivolously around foreign nations through Global Affairs Canada. They're giving more and more military aid and weaponry to Ukraine to facilitate more war as Canada is dying. What fiscal part of your administration are you talking about? There's nothing fiscal of what you're doing here. You're bleeding out the country intentionally and selling and liquidating its assets for your buddies, for your donors, for the top 1%, which is what a private equity person would do. Hence why I nickname him the private equity prime minister. He came from Brookfield. He came from that background of business, and now here he is facilitating exactly how he said he was going to govern countries. And I know that because he wrote it in his book. He wrote that in his book, Values. And it's step by step. It's almost like a perfect manifesto of how Mark Carney was going to govern Canada. And I bet you the people that were screaming the loudest for him and championing him and voted for him and doing the elbows up chicken dance have no idea that book even exists. They have no idea. It's a simple Amazon search. It's a simple, Google search. I'm sure you can find it at your local bookstore. But that was part of the manifesto. All this. That we need to change society. We need to change the entire concept of Canada and Canadian culture. And that's what he's doing here. Mass migration, censorship, completely changing the tone, getting Brookfield and BlackRock to heavily take over a lot of Canadian institutions and a lot of industries across the nation, completely eroding the very essence of what this country used to represent. This is all part of the plan, all part of the scheme. And that's why someone like him is the perfect figurehead, hand-selected to further tear away Canada. Justin Trudeau was an idiot. Justin Trudeau was like, Pee Wee Herman. And now here we are with Mr. Burns. And I find this guy more sinister than any of the years that Trudeau was in office. Because at least Trudeau, yeah, he was clowny. He was buffoonish. He was the Nepo baby. That's all it was. It was a Nepo baby with a silver spoon that, could do no wrong because daddy was prime minister. How hard could that be? And now you have Mark Carney, who's diabolically more sinister in my purview. And if you've looked into his book, if you look into his little manifesto, you should be petrified of what the capacity this man could do. So here's Liz Churchill showing us that people are waking up to this, and it's happening all across the globe. So it says, this is what the George Soros World Economic Forum replacement migration policies look like in full effect. Today, Soros was nominated for a Presidential Medal of Freedom. You can't make this up. So you could see all the countries that they've put this across. So you see Ireland, France, America, Spain. You don't see much of Canada. And maybe it's because we're so very kind of humble and kind, and we're kind of like the Ned Flanders of the world where, we just do everything with a smile. We're passive aggressive. I don't know what the case may be. But this is a result of the mass migration. This is why people like Tucker Carlson used to state this. Remember, he used to say replacement theory, and people assumed that was racist. They try to demonize him as being, a white supremacist and a racist and a bigot and so on. This is what he was talking about. That the billionaire class was purposely, intentionally bringing in a bunch of mass migrants from God knows where we can't hold accountability to them, and causing this dilemma, to cause chaos on the streets, because chaos is what the establishment thrives on. They thrive on sowing division. And we have had division since at least 2015, probably even before then, but it's very hyper-partisan from 2015 on. We saw it with the election of Donald Trump. We saw it with Brexit, and it's just gone worse and worse and worse. So this is all part of the intent. This is all part of the cause leading up to this. Here's Table Salt stating that in Canada, 500,000 net migrants, plus an estimated 900,000 international students, plus 135,000 temporary foreign workers in 2023. Just in that year alone. Nobody bothered to ask if there was anywhere for them to live. And this is the result. So this is the problem here, is that we have such a huge population boom, but we don't have housing. We don't have medical facilities. We don't have hospitals. We don't have schools. We don't have services that are helping people so that they can adapt to Canadian society, so they can get proper immigration and become citizens. You know, you don't have English second language courses. So these are all the problems. This is why it's such a mathematical dilemma. This is not about racism or xenophobia. It's simple math. If you're pouring in people to a population where we don't even have the services to meet our people currently, why are you allowing for more people to swarm in when we don't have the upkeep for the services that they're going to need? And this is the result of it. So you have this video here, and it says, there's an apartment viewing for rent in my building in Calgary. Yesterday was the third wave of people. So all these people are coming in to look at one apartment. This wave of people. And it's because a lot of these individuals, I don't know if they're migrants, I don't know if they're Canadian citizens, but because housing is so limited that they're dogpiling each other to get shelter. And this is the result of it. Look at that. That's all for one apartment. That's incredible. And of course, they're just going to pour in more people. They're going to, overload stadiums. They're going to build up, tent facilities so that people can find shelter. But they're not actually going to go to the bottom of the lengths to actually stop the cause. Because this involves people in higher authorities. As I stated here, the Century Initiative being the most predominant. So Riley Donovan did this little thread here. It says, to understand Canada's mass immigration policy, it's important to understand the corporate interest funding it. Century Initiative is an influential immigration lobby and wants to raise the population to 100 million. Here's what I found in their 2022 donor list. So these are all the people that are contributing to this NGO to get more mass migration. And this is from the 2022 donor list, which is currently on their website. So he says, in the finance world, so Bank of Montreal, Scotiabank, and TD, that's Toronto Dominion Bank, Power Corporation of Canada, a management and holding company with a market cap of $23.5 billion. So that's large banks contributing to this NGO. The corporate sector, Business Council of Canada, an advocacy group composed of CEOs and Canada's leading companies. AGT Foods and Ingredients, a huge Canadian processor of pulses and other ingredients. So I wonder if they're paying this NGO purposely so they can get migrants and to get temporary foreign workers to work at their food production facilities. That could go to Canadians that are in desperate need. That could be exactly the cause here of why they're doing this. They're paying this NGO to allow for the government to give them a leg up to scapegoat Canadian workers so they can get temporary foreign workers to work at these facilities. Individuals. So these are individual people that are paying into this. Dominic Barton, co-founder of the Century Initiative with Mark Wiseman, former global managing director at McKinsey. That's another big, giant global conglomeracy, McKinsey & Company, along with Vanguard and State Street. Not a lot of people talk about it. Not a lot of people, they know it by name. They know what I'm talking about when I mention it, but they don't like discussing it. It's one of those groups that you're not allowed to say anything. It's kind of like a hidden secret society that people are well aware of, but you're not allowed to say, like Freemasons. You know what I'm talking about, but you can't mention a word about that. Goldie Hyder, CEO of the Business Council of Canada. Willa Black, Vice President Corporate Affairs at Cisco. So those are the individual big donors involved with it. The Barizri brothers, Martin, Mazzi, and Mehdi, are co-founders of Apply Broad, an international student recruitment company based in Ontario. So they're part of this organization that helps bring in more international students so they can apply to colleges and universities in Ontario. And as we said months ago, we uncovered an investigation on colleges and universities abusing this measure and how criminal enterprises are making fraudulent documents so that organizations like this one and the colleges and universities and the NGOs that are harboring predominantly Indian students into the country, they're all capitalizing off of human smuggling, posing as helping an individual get a student visa, and then they get screwed once they get into this country, and then they become illegal. So this is, again, all because of this. All because of this. And we're not cracking down on this group. We're not cracking down on corporations. We're not cracking down on colleges and universities. But we will sham you. We will go after people on social media that point this out and deem you as racist, as deem you as vile and corruptive. 67% of Canadians, over half of the country, 67% of Canadians want lower immigration, including 68% of native-born and 62% of immigrants. Yes, legal immigrants are against this. They're furious at this. They're detesting the government right now because they're saying, why the hell did I have to go through all the legal channels and had to build myself up to get vetted into this country when migrants can come in illegally, not go through the legal channels, not have to document themselves, not needing an ID and passport and other things, and they get hotel stays, they get food, they get prepaid Visa cards for thousands of dollars. Why is that the case? When legal immigrants had to go through the hard way. They had to go through the proper way. And it says, but moneyed interests benefit from expanding the population and importing cheap labor. All the information in this thread is available on the Dominion Review. So this is the article that he's basing this off from and highlighting all the different financiers, all the different companies invested into this organization. And here it is here, Dominion Review says who funds the Century Initiative. This is from August of 2023. And you can see here, there's the Bank of Montreal, there's Scotia, TD, there's the foundations, there's the individuals. And at the bottom here, where it says, what can we do? Because a lot of people are now asking that. What can we do? If it's, higher ups that are doing all this, like we don't have a chance in changing this around. Well, we actually do. We can actually challenge our MPs. We can actually go and organize and be against this. And it says, even readers who wish to remain anonymous can contribute immensely to fight to restore our dominion. We encourage readers to become independent researchers and send us any information you find about the Century Initiative or other immigration lobbyists, and they give that email. So there's lots of ways we can actually fight back on this. Don't be discouraged. Don't be discouraged. Don't think for a second that, it's completely hopeless. Because people have fought back. We showed you, again, go back to what we showed you here with Liz Churchill. These are all the people that are upset and angered by this. Now, I'm not saying go violent and burn down buildings. That's not, I'm not encouraging people to do that. I condemn violent acts towards each other or, property damage. But we can come together as people, recognize this issue, and start a grassroots initiative to actually get back our country. We saw a bit of that in Toronto recently at Christy Pitts. The Canada First people, the people that want to, bring back the country to its glory days. And, you saw Antifa there. You saw counter-protesters going against them, demonizing them as racist and bigoted and whatever mainstream term they got plunged into their head. But the ultimate thing here, and the reason I bring this up, again, I'm not demonizing immigrants. I'm demonizing the NGOs, the government, and the corporations that purposely exploit the problem. Because we're all part of this. We're all part of this dilemma. We're all being exploited, from Canadian workers that are being scrubbed away for cheaper labor to legal migrants that had to go through the channels and loopholes themselves and getting, pissed off that, migrants are getting a clean slate and even getting paid to be illegals in this country. And even the legal migrants, because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what's going on. They're not being told, how to actually be legal citizens, and there's no checks and balances. And it's all done intentionally. It's all done intentionally, purposely, to drive up chaos, to sow further division, and cause rampant, deterioration of a country, that their final resort is to say, okay, we screwed up, so everyone get a digital ID. Everyone become into a police state. Let's get authoritarianism to the bone, because that's the only way we're going to be able to track and monitor and surveil. As if we never had that capability beforehand. As if all the years that Canada has been founded, and America and the UK and France and Germany and Italy and elsewhere had no possible way of dealing with migration until now. They're doing this intentionally for that reason.